Here's my Drake R8B receiver. Now, these are a real classic receiver, American made. The R8B is the last of the line. I don't think Drake made any more amateur or shortwave listening transceivers or receivers after this one. Some years ago I had an R8A and was very impressed with it and regretted selling it on, to be quite honest. And a couple of years back, the opportunity to buy this receiver came up, so I jumped at it. It's quite a distinctive radio. Styling is quite different from many of the other receivers I've got. I think this dates from the 1990s. As I say, it's the last of the Drake line. And we'll just have a little look through the controls, and then I'll show you the receiver in the shack. It's a little bit more important with this one that it's powered up and plugged in, actually, because some of the functions actually relate to the display screen directly, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. But anyway, we've got a traditional analog S meter here, which is nice to see. We've got, as we'd expect, the headphone jack. We've got a notch and tone control here. So there's a notch filter in this receiver. It's very, very useful for getting rid of any tuner uppers or whistles or birdies. We can switch in a notch filter. We've got a keypad, which, as well as being a numerical keypad for typing in frequencies, by using the function button, each key has a secondary function. For example, if we press F and 8, that will alter the backlight intensity, the lamp, as it's described on the key here. We can alter the beep, we can switch VFOs and so on using the F key in this keypad. We've got a memory to VFO button here. We've got a memory button, and again this radio has scanning facilities. Not a lot of use on HF, I would venture, but again these R8 receivers had the option of a VHF converter. This radio hasn't got it, it's just as standard, but you'll see when I show you the back of the receiver there's actually an antenna socket for VHF on this one. We can tune the radio by using the up and down stepper buttons, or we can use the tuning knob. Unlike the NRD525, this isn't sort of a knob you could easily spin, but nevertheless it works quite well. But it doesn't have the same quality feel as the JRC NRD525. The whole receiver, although still quite substantial, is much more lightly built and doesn't feel as robust as the JRC. We've got a squelch control and a passband offset control here. Dual controls on this knob. And then here to the right we've got the volume control and the RF gain control. These radios come pretty much fully filtered, and you'll see from the bandwidth selection here we have for AM a 6. Well, we could switch these filters into SSB if we wished as well. We've got 6 kilohertz for 2.3, 1.8 and a 0.5 for CW. We've also got an auto function which switches in the most appropriate filter for each mode. And then we've got our mode buttons here. We've got synchronous detection on this radio as well, so we can switch between normal AM and synchronous AM. FM, we have narrowband FM again for 10 meters or citizens band listening. Got lower and upper sideband. Got CW, and we've got an RTTY function as well. And just below there we've got the power on off button, which actually isn't labelled. I've not noticed that before, but that's your power on off switch. So let's turn the radio around and have a look at the rear. So quite a busy rear panel on this radio. Let's just move over to the antenna outputs for a moment. This one you see is labelled converter, and this is for the VHF converter if it was fitted. This is your HF antenna, but again this radio is able to switch between two antennas, so you can have a PL259, a coax connector in here, and you can also have another antenna using these wire terminals and switch between them from the front panel. This is labelled antenna 2, this is labelled antenna 1. Below that we have a switch for the speaker. We can switch this radio to use an external speaker or the internal speaker, or if we put the switch in the middle position, we'll have output both to the radio's own speaker and to the external speaker. We've got an external speaker jack here for a 4 ohm external speaker, and usually this is a 6.3mm, one of the larger style jack. That's for your external speaker. Here you can see we can run this radio on a sort of 12 volt DC supply. In fact, it'll accept between 11 and 16 volts DC here on these two terminals. We've got RCA or phono connectors for line audio. We've got 2 audio outputs here, so you could feed to 2 separate units. We've got a timer socket here, which I assume is to connect to a tape recorder, something of that nature. We've got a fuse here for the DC supply, and a fuse here for the AC supply. We've got a voltage selector here to select the various AC voltages that the receiver is capable of running on. I'll just move over here, and we've got the traditional 3-pin AC connector for the AC connection going into the radio. And lastly, we'll just pan down a little bit here and show you this, because this is an interesting feature of the radio. We've got an RS232 connector here. We can actually computer control this receiver, which, you know, given the vintage of it, it's quite impressive. There is, I believe, still out there somewhere some software that allows you to control the receiver on a PC. I know many years back with my R8A I did this, and I was even able to load a database of shortwave stations into the software, and by clicking on a station the radio would automatically tune to it. So got an RS232 there, and we just got a ground leg there for a ground connection to the radio. So that's the rear panel of the Drake R8B. Next we'll have a look at it in operation in the shack. Okay, we're back in the shack now with the Drake R8B plugged in and powered up. So let's switch it on. You can see that when it's connected to the main supply but the receiver's turned off, you have a clock display, and that's always running. If we press the power switch here, we're on an AM medium wave station there. Just to demonstrate the receiver works, you can see the S meter there. Nice analog S meter. But you'll notice when I was just looking at the receiver when it wasn't powered up, there were a number of buttons under the display that I didn't mention. The reason for that is that the labeling for those buttons, as you will see here, is actually on the display itself. So we've got a button here to switch between VFOs. We've got a button here that switches between a preamplifier and an attenuator. And by pressing the F key here, we can also get it to switch between antenna 1 and antenna 2. If you remember, we had the 2 antenna connectors on the back. We've got AGC fast and slow settings here, as well as a notch filter on this button. We've got a noise blanker, narrow and wide on this button. We've got a tuning step and timer control on this button. And with this button we can lock the frequency, so disable the tuning dial. We can switch between the clock and the frequency readout by using this button. So fairly straightforward, but for whatever reason Drake decided to have the labeling on the LCD display here for those particular buttons. Frequency input is pretty straightforward. If we wanted to go to let's say 9400 megahertz, we would dial 9.4000 and we're there. Okay, I don't think there's anything on that particular frequency, no. But it takes us there. As I said before, we can switch between, we're in a synchronous mode here in AM, we can press the AM again and we're in normal AM mode. And within that mode we can select any of these bandwidths for 2.3, 1.8 or even 0.5 if we wanted to. It's not going to work very well in AM. But similarly, if we go into lower sideband, it defaults to 2.3 kilohertz wide, but we can switch in 4 or even 6 if we wish to. So it works quite well. This radio's at the moment connected up to my Bonnie Whip active antenna. We'll have a quick listen on 40 meters amateur band, see if we can hear anything. Conditions aren't brilliant today. Let's have a look. So we'll key in 7.2000 and we're there. It's in a LSB mode, but we'll switch into the 2.3 kilohertz filter. Let's step down with the buttons. You see how these work. These are working in 5 kc steps. A little bit too wide really for the amateur bands. Got a little bit of descent here because my ICOM 7000 is running on 6 meters on FT8, and this receiver antenna is very close to it, so
we'll be recovering from that, but I'll need to go back really soon. So we'll probably be on during the day a bit more than I would normally have had chance to.
So quite nice audio quality. This is plugged into an external speaker, and unfortunately there's my 6 meter transmission, which is wiping it out. But that gives you a little idea of how the radio looks when it's powered up and how it functions. As I say, the build quality of these isn't equal to something like the NRD 525. The real plus point of these radios is the audio quality. If you've got an external speaker and a wide filter switched in, is absolutely excellent. And I don't think I've heard a shortwave receiver with better audio quality than the Drake R8s. So I hope that was of some interest. Thank you for watching.